Welcome to the podcast of School Beyond Limitations. In this podcast, you will learn how to guide your child through their school life with the intention to help them find their unique essence that will allow your daughter, your son to live a fulfilled and meaningful life.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. And today we are on our 8th episode of this show. And once again, it's me and Martina Geromin here with us. We'll be talking about another very interesting topic, and a title for this would be Learning to Live, Living to Learn. Why do we call that? I think there's a lot more to unfold as we speak, but I'd like to give the floor to Martina to start. So, Martina.
Thank you, Nayeef. It's always a pleasure being with you. And learning to live and living to learn is an important title, I think, because in my view and also in SBL's view, learning is taking place all the time. It's taking place everywhere and at any time. And when we start to understand that we are here on this planet to constantly develop and learn, and we keep this mind of curiosity all way through, because as we mentioned already in another podcast in the past, children, they are as such, they are curious, they come up with questions constantly, and sometimes it's also very challenging for parents and also for teachers to answer all the questions that come the way. And when we stop the children by saying, I don't have time now to answer your questions or whatsoever, then we basically kind of block their curiosity, their thirst for learning. And learning to live means we learn in all areas. That's why at SBL we are a holistic school, and I can't emphasize that enough, because it's in the Western world in the first place, but not only in the Western world. I think also where you sit, in Bangladesh and in Asia and in many countries, education has started to be seen out of the perspective of the intellectual and academic learning only. And academic learning is certainly an important part of growth, but that's not enough. We learn to live. We need to learn how to live. We need to keep this beginner's mind. I call it the beginner's mind, by saying, okay, I will never be completely at the end of my learning, because I'm here. It's a life journey. I start from somewhere, and within this life journey, I start from somewhere already, and something is built into myself, and I need to also extrapolate that and explore that. But I can only explore it if I'm open for learning, and if I allow this curiosity to be part of my daily approach, and to have this open mind. That's why one of the values of SBL is being open-minded and keeping an open mind and a beginner's mind all the time, that says, okay, I may have lots of degrees already, I may have lots of experience already, I may have a certain level of learning in my life, but I'm still not completely at the end, because the moment I stop being interested in something new, in the creative aspect, because creativity is basically a value, and not only a value, it's a skill that showcases that we create constantly, co-create constantly, ongoing. And that means that we always look at life from, interesting what life throws at me now, interesting what the situation I'm living in now shows me to face, to project, to make me aware, to make me understand. And when I have got, if I learn to keep learning, to having a beginner's mind, an open mind, then I learn to live, because I do not segregate. I don't say this is not interesting because this is not intellectual or academic. This may be, more physical, or this may be more on the emotional side, or more on the spiritual side. but or the entrepreneurial side or the financial side. But if I have an open mind and a beginner's mind, then I learn to live, and I live in order to learn. So learning to live is basically an invitation to live so that we are ready to learn constantly, together with others, by ourselves, and keeping this mind of curiosity, as I said before, which will never end if we have this kind of approach to it. And I would like to ask you how you have put this, approach to life, learning to live, living to learn, into your own life, and how maybe SPL has also shaped this way of looking at life, your own life. Maybe you can bring some examples of your own life.
Yeah, certainly. It is a very interesting title, to be very honest. I think it was in one of our previous episodes, I mentioned that the beginning and the ending of something is certain. Like, you cannot change it. Learning is also something that comes along with it, since the very beginning till the very end. We learn to feed ourselves from the womb of our mother since the day we are conceived. And then as we come out to the world, we learn to cope up, and then we grow. And that journey of growth also has a lot of learning to it. We learn to walk, we learn to breathe, we learn to see things, we learn to hold things, feel, and sense it. And this carries on. This carries on. And perhaps towards the end of near to the ends of our lives, we learn to cope up with the mechanisms of our body, the way it functions, the challenges it might give, physically, mentally, or however it may be, and all the great things that comes and then we have accomplished in life. We learn to deal with those. So it's just that we cannot avoid learning in life, but what we learn and how we learn and how we see learning as to be a part of our life is something that people can learn to see and things differently. The perspective matters. I personally have been understanding of this notion since a very young age, and I'm blessed to do that because I always had this understanding that there's got to be something more to academic learning in school. There's got to be something more to do as friends within a circle outside of class, which is just not talking about homeworks and other things. And there's got to be something more to life than just doing the very basics that everybody does, and everybody does the similar kind of things. I just didn't know what it was, and that's when SBL came in and played a role. It showed me the things, lots of different things that could be done to utilize those times much more proactively and then learn from different dynamics. So, learning in terms of education does not have to be only academic learning. There's a holistic way approach to it. There's learning through traveling. There's learning through even just being there out in the real world and engaging with things. I can talk about my personal experiences. I think since the last 2 years, I've went out to the real world. I've went out to public settings. I've went out and showed my interest in engaging into things, which had me, pretty good connections in the government, pretty good connections with people from the industrial worlds, pretty good connections with people from the education sector as well, from all the different sectors. And look at me now, I'm working at a pharmaceutical sector, which was never a part of me growing up and learning in schools. So what it does is that it gives you new ways to learn things. It gives you new ideas and new interests to pick on. So I think people can also learn to sit idle. It's also a habit that you have to be in the habit of learning. You have to be in the habit of, always watching out and looking for opportunities to go there, to learn things, to do things, to see things. And this motivation comes from within. First of all, it's true, but it also has, our surroundings also play a big role in whether or not a person can properly pick on this learning motive. And that's where we need our parents. That's where we need our friends, our surroundings, our circles, our schools, where we spend a lot of our time, perhaps most of our times as children, around the world. So I think if this notion is properly bred into an individual's mind, that you're out there just to learn, and you just keep learning. Success is another step of it. It's not any different to learning. I mean, that's when the proper thing hits, and I mean, we grow out and we step out of the box, and we really want to be there out.
Yeah, and how powerful is it actually when also, the teachers themselves define themselves as learners, so that the students see that this is actually a spirit of learning. And the teacher says, of course, I know many things, maybe, but I don't know them all. And we co create together and we learn together. And it's, as you said, it's a habit. It's a habit that is actually, or a skill that's there at the beginning, as we mentioned before, and that can be encouraged through people around us. The surroundings, as you say, play an important role, and of course, we always talk about being intrinsically motivated, yeah, and that's also okay. That's, of course, something that we all aim for. But the intrinsic motivation gets nurtured by an environment that actually always invites you to make choices, to say, okay, if you now go with me, then we can do this together. If you do not go with me, then you stand still, for instance. And also, standing still may teach you something in the long run, but that may teach you, that may take much more time. And as you said, you've been going outside, you've been connecting with people, and that, by taking initiative, because if you are an innate learner, and we all are, and we then learn to take initiative, and we understand that I can bring this back, I can discuss that with my facilitator, with my teacher, with my peers, and so forth. What happens? uh, Something very beautiful happens, that we see that each step that we are doing makes a big difference and helps co-create something completely new. For instance, just to give an example, we just came back from our last residential week, right? And we had an accident happening there. So one of the facilitators basically had an injury and needed to undergo a surgery, yeah, and with the Achilles tendon, right? And what happened here? Of course, this is not a nice thing to happen, for sure not. Nobody wants to be in that situation. But if you are, we used it also as a learning possibility for everyone, taking care for the staff member, being there, looking for ways, in a foreign country, what is the best for this person now to do, catering for the food, finding out about the body itself. We, in class, then they learned the tendon, and started to understand what are the functions of the tendon, so that we understand how, is the body shaped, but on the basis of what happened in life. If I'm just memorizing this outside of any context, I think, then it may not stay with you. But this is not, I don't want to say we want to go through such experiences, but I just use this as an experience to showcase that if you use the experience that happens in life as a possibility of learning more about this specific theme and topic, then I have a kind of connection to the content, and I can frame it. And once things are conceptualized and framed well, and I have an emotional, connection with what we are talking about, because in this case, of course, there is an emotional connection, because it affected a staff member, it affected the students, it affected the entire team. And then, of course, you have a different way of looking at things. And that's about learning to live and living to learn, right? It's about understanding we have experiences in front of us, sometimes very tricky ones, sometimes beautiful ones, of course. everyone aims to have, nice experiences, but that's also something I think we need to learn as well, and we need to transfer to everyone as well. Let's not fall into the trap of saying this is good and this is bad. Let's look at the situation and acknowledge the situation as a learning opportunity for yourself as a person, but also for the team, for the community. And then we can create further. And then we see that life is a constant journey. And the way we approach it is our choice, is the way whether we want to. You mentioned before an important word, which in my view is an important word. It's perspective. Look at it from different perspectives, and if we look at it from different perspectives, then we have a different approach to life. It's an approach to life of, living life as it appears in front of us. Nayeef, what would you say?
Oh, very true. And you mentioned and you raised some interesting and important key points as well. We being critical is good, but we should never be seeing it as from perspective of right and wrong. I think it's another very important part you said. And also like off topic, in my religion, there's like a very, very interesting saying. It's called "You become what you mock," right? So instead of just mocking, seeing it from a different perspective and taking the learning from there can actually make us aware to not do the same mistakes we are mocking or we are talking against. And I think another important part, which I took it as very important, was that connections. In the story you talked about and that happened in the residential, everybody was so engaged to take care of that person was because they felt the connection. So for us to be able to be a learning being, constant learning being, we have to feel connected to the things that we are wanting to learn. Look at everything that's happening around us. Many people are focusing on specific things. Some things are important to them, some things are not important to them, and all these understandings and all these notions are coming from within themselves because they don't feel connected to the topics that they're not invested in or that they're not thinking about. It's because they feel that perhaps they might not have any impact in their lives, which is not true. I'm a firm believer that everything, every little thing in this world is so much interconnected that even if I make sound here, if someone else hears it from outside, it's not a personal thing. I make a sound, it's out in the world, it's making some differences in this world, and the butterfly effect is very much active. So we have to be mindful and aware of all the things that's happening around us, near and far, because everything is eventually going to impact and affect us, and always try to find a better way to make this world a little better than we found it.
Yeah, I think Naive, that brings us to the end because this is, I firmly believe the same thing. And that's why, you ended up to be working and learning with SPL. And we still continue this journey because there is just clarity about this interconnectedness. And because we all know that not just any action, but any thought, already has an impact on our outside world, and that everything is interconnected. And that's why we need to be, as you said, mindful, very mindful about our actions, our behaviors, our thoughts, and our beliefs. And this is what we are doing also at the SPL, because we think that helps us to learning to live in a mindful way, in a conscious way that always caters for the needs for oneself, but also the needs of any other being.
Absolutely, absolutely. And living with that, I think we can call this an end for today. Do keep an eye on our channel for another episode if you're interested in what we're talking about, and wishing you all a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
At School Beyond Limitations, we support our students find their unique essence. Feel free to share the content of this podcast with other parents. We are here to show that your children can, indeed, bring their unique essence into life. So, reach out to us if you think that this is what you'd like your daughter, your son to experience, or apply through our website. Also, leave your comments, your questions, or your review about the podcast. Share it with others. And, as you know, sharing is caring.